The Ford v. Wainwright case took place in 1986, following Alvin Ford's conviction of murder and his subsequent death sentence in Florida. Before his sentencing and his trial, he was deemed to be mentally competent. There were no signs of him being mentally disturbed or having any mental illnesses. However, after his conviction, he was found to be severely psychotic and started showing signs of mental deficiencies. As a result, the Supreme Court examined whether the Eighth Amendment prohibited the death of a person who is deemed to be insane, and their final ruling was that people who are mentally insane should not be executed, since the Eighth Amendment includes the ban on cruel and unusual punishment. So they included the cruel and unusual punishment into the concept of people who are insane and mentally incompetent. In relation to this week's module, which is ethical and policy considerations, I feel this case shows a very smart and empathetic consideration, even though when it comes to law, I feel like empathy should be put aside because sometimes you have to put aside the emotional aspect so it doesn't cloud your judgment or create any bias or preconceived notions. But in this case, it shows that mental health does really need to be considered because someone can make decisions logically, clearly, rationally. Some other people don't. But more specifically, this case shows that someone can deteriorate because of the conditions that they're in, and so therefore being incarcerated may not be the best environment for them to be in because they rather need to heal rather than being punished for their actions. In relation to how I feel about this case and its outcome, I believe that the court's final decision to say that the execution of people who are deemed insane should not be an option, and to have it fall under the portion of the Eighth Amendment that bans cruel and unusual punishment. I feel that this case and this whole thing was appropriate and honestly was acceptable because, again, the possibility of having clouded judgment and your decision making when facing a mental illness it's impossible to avoid in some cases. And furthermore, when you do suffer from a mental illness and you're placed in an environment that's not going to help, it could just deteriorate even more, such as putting Ford in prison. I feel that he needs to be assessed and placed in some kind of facility, get counseling, therapy, whatever would help him to heal from his mental illness. Furthermore, I feel that the court's final say also provided legal protection for the mentally ill. A lot of times I feel mentally ill individuals are overlooked in the criminal justice system and are rather automatically seen as a criminal or a bad person because of their mental illness. However, mental illness does not always mean bad or evil, and I feel like that happens a lot with people who do commit crimes. It also, like I said, does recognize mental illness in law. A lot of times I feel mental illness is sometimes sometimes it is seen and then used as a way to kind of put the blame on somebody, but sometimes it's overlooked, and I feel like sometimes cases escalate and become worse because of the inability to see someone's mental illness. What this case has taught me about the criminal justice system and mental health is that, again, mental health I feel like is often overlooked in the criminal justice system, or it is used as a way to blame someone and kind of take the easy way out of it. However, I believe the criminal justice system does need to recognize mental illness in all aspects. Even if someone doesn't, it's important to take that into consideration because mental illnesses impact a person mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and in so many different ways. And if someone is suffering to a severe extent, it does cloud their judgment, their ability to be rational, And furthermore, if there's someone like Ford who wasn't mentally disturbed but did eventually start to show signs, placing them in incarceration is not the best idea. They need to seek help, they need to seek therapy, and they just need to seek assistance to help them overcome their mental illness. So it's important to recognize that. And I believe the overall final say of this case was extremely important, especially for those who are facing a mental illness, because it shows that they are seen, they are heard, and it shows that they will seek the same help that others do, even if they aren't facing a mental illness.